Good evening, our viewers out there. Welcome to our program on Sunday evening every week. We'll be reviewing the book Zimbabwe, My Home and Frustrations. Among others, we'll also be reviewing the political challenges that Zimbabweans face today as we journey towards the 2018 elections. As usual, today I've got Director Fuma, who will be discussing with me the various chapters, and today we are on chapter 6. But before we start on chapter 6, I'll go through an overview of the previous chapters. Some of you might have missed the other chapters, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The chapter 1, I introduced the book, putting into consideration the historical perspective of Zimbabwe from 1890 to the present day Zimbabwe. In that chapter 1, I looked at the great people of Zimbabwe, the rich culture, the great architecture of great Zimbabwe and the Victoria Falls, the political parties, the early political parties, ZAPU, ZANU, the liberation struggle, and also struggle within struggles during the liberation struggle within ZANU-PF and ZAPU, culminating into 1980 elections.
Elliot, sorry, I forgot to start the record on Skype. So do you mind starting again?
No problem.
Okay, I'll push in the record now.
Yes, I can see there are quite a lot of people already tuned in, viewing on my Facebook. I was just talking to Derek. Derek is also recording the other side, but he forgot to push the button. So I'm going to repeat, the first chapter.
The introduction.
Just quickly, an overview of first chapter. So yes, the first chapter, as I was saying, I actually did explore the historical perspective of Zimbabwe. The reason was also to make sure that people who don't know the geographical position of Zimbabwe, the culture of Zimbabwe, and also its people are acquainted to where Zimbabwe is and also its people. I also touched about the great culture of Zimbabwe, the various dialects within the languages of Zimbabwe. From 1890 to 1980 historical perspective, including the liberation struggle, the struggle within struggles within political parties, ZAPU and ZANU, and also the independence, Zimbabwe's first independence in 1980, to which Mugabe became the prime minister. In chapter 2, I gave a sort of a helicopter view of my childhood. It was very important for me to link the historical background of Zimbabwe and my childhood, because we are a product of both internal and external environment. And our history influences our culture, our behavior, and also in terms of how we interact with the outside world. Key in that chapter 2 was the fact that my first 6 years I was in the protected camps in the Nandi Valley under curfew for 6 to 6. So in a way, 6 years of incarceration, and this was during the liberation struggle. I actually covered in detail about the various events of the liberation struggle in chapter 2, and also my educational background, primary school, and also the various events of Defiance within my education career. We also have covered chapter 3. The chapter 3, we looked at the formation of MDC, not as an event, but as a process, culminating in the leadership of President Morgan Tsvangirai who emerged as the national leader of the party. I also looked at the referendum of February 2000, in which Mugabe was first defeated, and how he then unleashed the violence against the farmers, the opposition parties, and also the murders and destruction of property that ensued thereafter. In chapter 4, I looked at the forensic events of Bindura, my encounter with Bodagezi, the brutal MP and the commissar of ZANU-PF, culminating in the death of my brother in an encounter which was a look-alike, and also various murders apart from my brother. Destruction of property, not only contained within Bindura, but Bodagezi exported the violence under the Green Bombers or Bodagezi militia across the entire country. I looked also at my encounter with Elliot Pfebve. Some of you might have heard of the sort of clause, the battle of the two Elliots. So the battle of two Elliots was as a result of my encounter with Elliot Pfebve as a candidate of ZANU-PF, and I was also an MP candidate for MDC. And then we moved on to chapter 5, in which I introduced a theoretical framework of the politics of Zimbabwe called EP, Model of Politics in Zimbabwe, in which I looked at the structure of opposition as opposed to the structure of ZANU-PF, and how those structures can be interpreted as either being an effective structure from a ZANU-PF perspective of rigging elections, and how we can learn from that as opposition to avoid a similar event in the 2018 election and subsequent elections for that matter. It resembles Maslow's law in a way, in a hierarchical form, and an inverse of the opposition to ZANU-PF. And there also I looked at, I did a research and discovered that Mugabe is the 8th richest person in Africa, worth $3 billion US, which is quite shocking, really, considering that Zimbabwe is going through economic meltdown, and here is the president who doesn't even run any industry, and it's worth $3 billion. I also looked at, I had a research about dictators of the world, present and past, and the outcome of my research revealed that people who are in power and were born between the 20th and the 30th of the month are likely to be dictators.
Really?
And I looked at Mugabe, who was born on the 21st of February. I looked also Saddam Hussein.
How scientific is that?
28th. Saddam Hussein, the 28th. Augusto Pinochet, the 25th. I looked at Benito Mussolini, the 29th. And I looked at Adolf Hitler, the 28th. I think were born between the 20th and 30th of the month.
I think it's coincidence.
Is it a coincidence? Well, there you are. And that was my research of an outcome.
Yeah.
And every dictator, most of these dictators fit the bill. So it's up to you whether you think it's a coincidence or you can confirm my hypothesis, and then we can turn it into theory.
Yeah, I was just thinking Jesus Christ was born on the 25th.
So yes, so those were the previous chapters, and so over to you, Derek.
Thank you, Elliot, for an incisive summary of the previous 5 chapters. Today we're looking at chapter 6. Hello to my Facebook friends, Shepard, Henry, Gideon there is watching. I had Cyprian, Marvin, Simon, Evelyn. Thank you for watching. Canisius, Andy, Butley, Bernard, Tindo, TC, Remy, Bege, Coulson. Thank you guys for tuning in. Ropafadzo has just joined us. So we're looking at, we're continuing to look at Zimbabwe, My Home, My Frustration. It's a book by Elliot Pfebve. He wrote this book about a decade ago, but some of the things that are in this book are still relevant. It's rich in the history of the struggle for Zimbabwe, which has continued from the 60s, 70s up to today, 80s, 90s. So what I'm going to do is read the first paragraph of chapter 6, and it's as follows. And the title of the chapter is The Bad and the Good. So it goes as follows. Zimbabwe Heroes and Villains. 11 August. Every year is the time we reflect our revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought for and pay allegiance to the fallen heroes of all times. Every nation draws its pride and strength from its historical past of vanguard sons and daughters whose contribution to economic, social, and political cohesion merits thus. Zimbabwe, although in limbo, is no exception. We have our heroes and villains. While we owe the reversal of imperialism to our heroes, political independence remains elusive as villains continue to clog the wheels of fortunes with disastrous political quagmire. Today, and that was 10 years ago, I think maybe 15, because it says today, 25 years have passed, okay? And now it's almost 40 years, isn't it? So 25 years have passed. We remain one step forward and 10 steps backwards. End of the first paragraph of chapter 6. Do you think that we're still the same as 25 years after independence?
Yes, let me just clarify. Although you find in this book there will be some events that are 10 years old, some 6 years old, some maybe 5 years old. The way it was written is that it encompasses various events over a period of time, up to 2011.
Yeah.
When the book was published.
Okay.
Now back to your question in terms of heroes. When I wrote that chapter, I looked at the debate as to who should be declared a hero and who should declare somebody a hero, and how can we define our heroes from a Zimbabwean perspective. And I think it has been in various newspapers, people have been debating it, and given the scenario that the word hero has been hijacked by ZANU-PF, and that for you to be declared a hero, you must be a card-carrying member of ZANU-PF, and you must be a high-ranking member of ZANU-PF. It has nothing to do with your contribution, national contribution, which is what we Zimbabweans have always been saying, that the hero status itself has lost its relevance. A hero in every measure should actually epitomize your national contribution, be it in politics, be it in economics, be it in business, be it in culture, in music. And so that chapter, when I wrote it, it was after a lot of people have been declared national heroes, Elliot Pfebve, Kapoda against people who have unleashed violence against our own people were eventually declared heroes. And then I looked also at saying, okay, for it to be a relevant declaration of heroism, what should it encompass? And who should declare one a hero? And I looked at it. It shouldn't be a political party, but it should be the state. But then I looked at also the challenges that we find ourselves in Zimbabwe. That is there a difference between the state and the ZANU-PF, or the ruling party? In normal circumstances, in other countries, the state is different from a ruling party. But because ZANU-PF have been in power for the past 37 years, and they ZANUized every institution, there's virtually no difference between ZANU-PF and the state. So even if we surrender the declaration of heroes to the state, it will still be ZANU-PF. It will only become relevant when a new government in Zimbabwe that actually looks at true heroes of our nation. And I also gave a bit of some examples of people that I categorize as being true heroes of our time. People like Josiah Tomogara, people like Herbert Chitepo, people like George Sulundika, Joshua Mkomo, Ndabaningi Stole. We know that they didn't declare Ndabaningi Stole a hero because of personal differences. So, which was saying, look, it doesn't have to be determined by personal differences between a head of state and an individual. It should be the work of goodwill, how that person influenced be the historical perspective of the nation. Chief Rekai Tangwena is one notable person who was declared a hero, and I think he deserved. Sally Mugabe, she was a mother of a nation, and I think she worked very hard during Sally's time. Even Mugabe, I suppose everybody agreed that if Sally Mugabe was still alive, probably Mugabe would have left power long back, and Zimbabwe would have moved on in terms of economic empowerment and empowering the people of Zimbabwe in a way. So yes, there are quite a lot of heroes who lay the heroes' acre today, whom every year on the 11th of August we pay allegiance to them. And it is important that we reflect upon their contribution to the war of liberation struggle, among others. It's not suddenly tied to the liberation struggle. But I think it is, every country anywhere in the world, they designate certain days where they reflect and they respect their heroes. And Zimbabwe is no different.
Okay. Thank you for that, Elliot. So, it's really a short chapter, this one. And I think you've covered a lot of the things which are in the chapter. So, there's a list that you put of ZANU-PF names targeted for sanctions by the EU.
Yes.
What is your take on the impact of these targeted travel restrictions? Some like to call them sanctions, and I've always said, look, the word sanctions is a very broad term, and if you really want to see the impact of certain measures that have been implemented against a certain country, you need to dig deeper and look at the actual lettering, okay, besides just the word sanction, because the word sanctions, obviously, for some people, just the word sanction might actually make them believe that certain things are happening which are not really happening. For example, I'll give an example that we have sanctions which may be targeted at maybe the restriction of military materials entering a certain country, which is different from fully fledged economic sanctions, which is different from just travel restrictions. But the word sanction itself might scare investors to think maybe if we invest in a country which is under sanctions, whether they are travel restrictions or fully fledged economic sanctions or any other type of restriction, but under the name sanction itself, that might that might put the country in not a so favorable position, but also at the same time, sanctions is something that might give a government to which they have been imposed an excuse to give for any economic mismanagement that they may be guilty of. So what is your take? You've got a list of 126 names at the time. Okay, what do you think has been the impact of these sanctions?
Firstly, I need to acknowledge our viewers from my side here. I can see Tinashe, I can see Marshall Matimba, Mike Tapiwa. How are you guys? I can see Robert, Mike. I can see quite a list of. I will mention you by names as we go along.
Can I also just mention Kennedy for joining us quite recently? Thank you, Kennedy.
Yeah. Right, okay. So, yes, so we are discussing about the targeted sanctions because in chapter 6, I also listed, I profiled 126 ZANU-PF leadership. This includes cabinet ministers, also in military, in police, and also within high-ranking officials of ZANU-PF. Robert Mugabe, of course, is number one on the list of the 126. These are people who were on targeted sanctions by EU. And most of these are also on targeted sanctions by the US, specifically because of their behavior and because of the crimes against humanity that they've committed against the people of Zimbabwe. I know Robert Mugabe and ZANU-PF, they've been using the targeted sanctions as a scapegoat for everything they failed to deliver to the people of Zimbabwe. They promised, even in 2013, they promised 2.2 million jobs. They've delivered none other than a negative. They've actually destroyed the very few industries that were left. So instead of adding even one job, they've subtracted thousands of jobs because of their incompetence and because of corruption, rampant corruption within the hierarchy of ZANU-PF and government. Now, back to the sanctions. Again, did they have an impact? Every sanctions will have an impact. I think the question is, to what extent will be the impact? Some of the impact is gradual, some of it is radical. Again, these were targeted sanctions in terms of travel sanctions. And if you look at the moment, the first family, they've always been, at every given opportunity, they would want to shop in the European, in Europe, Paris, London,
Harrods,
the Western world.
At Harrods.
And sorry, you want to add something?
They would want to shop at Harrods, for example.
Yes. But all what you are saying is, these were, Mugabe was able to go to United Nations. If there are official meetings, yes, he would go to attend to United Nations. If there were official meeting, even within the EU, he would be allowed to come specifically to attend a meeting, and he would not be allowed to go for shopping, right? So in other words, Mugabe cannot use that as an excuse that the country is at its knees in terms of economic meltdown because of targeted sanctions, because those were travel sanctions. The fact that he is not traveling to Europe or to America should make Zimbabwe even a better country. Should make. Sorry, can you?
got some noise.
Hello, can I?
Yeah. WS2.
Just hold on.